You're watching The Legal Breakdown. Glenn, we've got major news here as the Kilmar Abrego Garcia case gets appealed from the federal district court up to an appeals court panel. The judge did not seem too willing to abide by what Trump was trying to push forward here. Can you explain what just happened?
Brian, I've never read an appellate court opinion like this. It came from the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. It was a unanimous slam of the Trump administration and what it has been doing in the Abrego Garcia case. Our viewers will recall that Judge Sines has been litigating, whether in that case the Trump administration should be held in contempt of court for intentionally violating not only her order, but the Supreme Court directive that the Trump administration must facilitate the release and return of Garcia, whom they unlawfully deported to El Salvador. And they admitted, the Trump administration did, it was wrong. Well, they didn't like what Judge Sines has been doing, so they ran up to the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. And Brian, I have to quote a little bit of the unanimous three-judge panel's opinion when they say, "We shall not micromanage the efforts of a fine district judge attempting to implement the Supreme Court's recent decision." They then go on to say, "It is difficult in some cases to get to the very heart of the matter, but in this case, it's not hard at all. The government, the Trump administration, is asserting a right to stash away residents of this country in foreign prisons without the semblance of due process that is the foundation of our constitutional order. Further, the administration claims in essence that because it has rid itself of custody, there is nothing that can be done." This should be shocking, not only to judges, but to the intuitive sense of liberty that Americans far removed from courthouses still hold dear. And that, Brian, is just for openers. This is a dramatic rebuke of the Trump administration's lawlessness and unconstitutionality.
I think it's worth noting here that this likely can't be appealed beyond the appeals court. Normally, they would not see what they like from the district court judge, Judge Sines. They would bring it up to the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. They're clearly not going to like what they hear from the panel on the Fourth Circuit, and so normally they would appeal this thing up to the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court has already made its ruling, and that's why the district court is trying to get them to comply with the Supreme Court's ruling, and so there's nowhere to go from here. Is that correct?
You're exactly right, Brian, because Judge Sines is trying to implement the Supreme Court's ruling saying the Trump administration must facilitate. So the last thing I would think the Trump administration is going to want to do is try to bubble this thing up to the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court, I suspect, would slap them down exactly as the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals just did.
Well, I'm curious whether they're going to try to do that, because at this point, there's really nowhere to go but up. And if they just allow the appeals court panel ruling to stand, then they're forced to comply. And then we do land ourselves in the very constitutional crisis, legally speaking, that we've been talking about, because there's nowhere else to go. There's no other appeal to make.
Yeah, and I feel like the Trump administration has been itching for a true constitutional crisis. I just don't think this is the place they're going to want to have that fight. Because let me read one other passage from the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals opinion, and it has to do with how the Trump administration is basically misdefining the word facilitate, saying it doesn't require us to do anything. We just have to sit back passively and see whether Mr. Garcia presents himself at a port of entry to the United States, which is just an absurd argument. Here's what they say. If they would allow the Trump administration's definition of facilitate, it would reduce the rule of law to lawlessness and tarnish the very values for which Americans of diverse views and persuasions have always stood. That is two of the three passages that I would like to quote for our viewers, because I'm telling you, Brian, this is just about a 6 to 7 page ruling. I have never read anything like this from any court of appeals.
But Glenn, isn't that the whole point? Don't they want to reduce the rule of law to lawlessness? Isn't this exactly what they're going for? I mean, good on the Fourth Circuit panel for acknowledging it and recognizing it, but they're not telling the Trump administration anything they don't want to know. It's not that they are trying to comply with the law, but accidentally aren't. They are trying to rewrite reality here. They're trying to create law out of the very lawlessness they seek to push forward.
You're exactly right. We all know what the Trump administration is trying to do. They're trying to basically walk the rule of law deep into the woods and shoot it dead. But the federal judiciary will not stand for it. And the three-judge panel called the Trump administration out on exactly what they're trying to do, not what they're claiming to do. And listen to this final passage that I want to read. If today the executive, the Trump administration, claims the right to deport without due process and in disregard of court orders, what assurances will there be tomorrow that it will not deport American citizens and then disclaim responsibility to bring them home? And what assurance shall there be that the executive, the Trump administration, will not train its broad discretionary powers upon its political opponents? Everybody knows what's going on here, but, Donald Trump thinks he's still fooling people. Well, maybe he's fooling the gullible, but you know what? Federal court judges ain't gullible.
Now, at the same time that this is being appealed up to the Fourth Circuit, because clearly the Trump administration isn't happy with how Judge Sines is carrying out the Supreme Court orders, the Trump administration is still forced to check in with Judge Sines every day at 5 p.m. Eastern. Is that correct?
Yes, because her order remains in effect, and it's not only her order, it is essentially an order of the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court affirmed her order that the Trump administration must facilitate the release and return of Abrego Garcia and give updates about the steps it's taking and the progress it's making in that regard. And what the Trump administration has been doing is filing daily status reports saying, yeah, we told you before, Judge, we ain't doing shit. That's not exactly how they put it. That's my spin on what they're putting in those declarations, those status reports. We're not doing anything. Well, you know what? That's not going to sit well with any level of federal court, not the trial court, not the appeals court, and certainly not the Supreme Court.
Glenn, it's after 5 p.m. Eastern today. Do you have an update in terms of what the Trump administration put forward to Judge Sines today?
Yeah, we still haven't done shit, and we intend to do exactly shit in the future. Again, my spin. They filed their declaration today, which says nothing different than prior declarations in substance, that we're basically not even going to tell you what you ordered us to tell you.
And so when does this stop? Like, when is Judge Sines going to say, okay, enough is enough? You don't get to just say, nothing today, nothing today, nothing today. Like, the Supreme Court's ruling was to facilitate the release of Abrego Garcia. And so if it's not being done, at what point did Judge Sines put her foot down and say, this is unacceptable, something needs to be done by X date?
She's already put her foot down, Brian. She ordered expedited discovery to see whether the Trump administration has intentionally defied her court orders, continues to do so, and should be held in criminal contempt. And then she will have options up to and including jailing the Trump administration officials who are so plainly in contempt. Their behavior every day is contemptuous. So right now, I don't suspect there's necessarily going to be anything that forwards the ball on the release and return of Mr. Garcia as these days go by. But here is what the Trump administration officials are doing. Every day they file another basically non-responsive declaration. They are digging their own criminal contempt of court hole deeper and deeper and deeper. And any number of officials could find themselves cooling their heels in a jail cell at the end of this expedited discovery.
All right, well, we will, of course, stay on top of this. Obviously, major news breaking on a daily basis as it relates to this case. So for those who are watching, if you want to follow along, please make sure to subscribe. The links to both of our channels are right here on this screen. That's also the best way to support our work more broadly. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown.